All right, great. Well, we're live now here with Real Fridays, and there's nobody that knows better around the structure of Real Fridays than one of the co-founders of the show, Jeremy Potter. Where every Friday we talk about real things in the industry, feet on the street, activities that are going on between mortgage companies and between the mortgage market landscape, technology, different innovations and trends. It's funny as I was. Looking at this, Jeremy, I was looking at this and I was able to have AI create an image for this, and
That's
this kind of has a good look to
it. Yeah, it's flashy. I like the gold mic there on your side. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
It's good to be back, Rick. Good to see you.
Yeah,
Good to talk to you. I know we haven't caught up in a minute, so this is great. Yeah.
No, this is great. So where are you right now? You're always on the road and in transit. So are you in Michigan right now, or you're in DC? I see that JDP in DC.
Yeah, DC. Yeah, yes. No, it's right on. So National Housing Conference has one-day summits every so often on topics, bringing together a lot of different policy, product, industry, and consumer advocate folks in the same room. So yesterday was National Housing NHC, National Housing Conference's Communications for Housing Solutions Day. Scott Turner spoke, HUD Secretary, as well as a bunch of different panels. One of the panels was really interesting on media. So Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, I'm forgetting one of the, Bloomberg, Wall Street, I'm forgetting one of the publications, but hearing about how they cover the housing beat, why housing became a beat, separate from the economy or separate from like a larger piece of their publication. So that was super interesting. Obviously, everybody wants to talk about an AI. There was a really good AI panel, I thought. And then my panel was multi-generational stories. So AARP, student housing, veteran homelessness, and homelessness generally, and then me with the first-time homebuyer. And so we talked about kind of the full spectrum of housing and how it affects each other, why you can't move up, downsize, why there's not enough units, what happens next. So it was really a broad group, frankly. And then I took some meetings today while I was here. So
I imagine the audience, the attendees were mainly policymakers, or like who was in attendance?
A lot of policymakers. So they did have Hill staffers. And they did have some Fannie Freddie FHA folks, FHFA folks in the room. But a lot of consumer groups or housing advocates. So that would be, groups that invest in multifamily housing, enterprise solutions types. LISC was in the room, and some researchers. I talked to a bunch of people who are doing different papers and research in housing or housing related issues as well. Yep.
So what were they?
Yeah, so it was good.
You go to a number of these eclectic conferences, as I call it, because I'm much more sort of mainstream with the state associations and the national associations of mortgage banking and maybe some of the broker shows. What would you consider those category of conferences? Are they just more public policy, more on housing, more on private money, or more thematic, like homelessness, like you had mentioned, homelessness veterans, or or access to home ownership? Is it more thematic?
Yeah, you nailed it with policy. I would say, so I definitely try to span a bunch of different areas of housing. I think when I was working on strategy and innovation at Rocket, it was pretty clearly the Venn diagram overlap of where policy, product, and process overlap. And I know that's weird because it's alliteration, all P's, but literally the policy does drive what you can or can't do with the technology, what you can or can't do, especially with mortgage product development. And so for me, as being a consultant for the last 3 years, I found that was a really good intersection for me to stay close to the policy stuff, the DC Beltway stuff, the FHFA rules over Fannie and Freddie, what changes Fannie and Freddie are making, always helped me advise tech companies, particularly ones that don't have tons of industry experience, manage a bunch of clients, usually lenders, on what can we do? How do we implement? And then, of course, I've always been interested in in product development, just as an amateur technologist, I would say, that's always been fascinating to me. So I try to stay close just to help drive the technology in the right direction and not spend a bunch of time spinning our wheels on stuff that's not going to work for lenders.
No, that's pretty fascinating. I think the policy side is very illuminating, because obviously, especially when it comes to new tech, in AI right now is kind of launched from a pure innovative perspective, but it's sort of the cloud of regulation, and I don't want to call it a cloud because I think regulation is often very good, and so. But that cloud of regulation is beginning to sort of show itself over and above these AI solutions. And a lot of the companies, I was talking to one yesterday that had just raised $6 million on a workflow management kind of AI solution for processors and underwriters, founded by two people that are non-industry, but they're really impressive, Princeton guys, and Google guys. But they have no guidance. They have no either regulatory guidance, no policy related, because policy is a framework. I mean, policy is different than regulation, right?
It is different, correct.
So, but
I
these
think
people,
of policy more like
money.
I think of. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Rick. I would say you're spot on. I think of policy is more like what different variations you can do on the existing either process or product. What I mean by that is I'll use e-closing or appraisal modernization. Those aren't regulations. There are regulations underneath them about e-signatures, e-sign, identity, or appraisal independence. Those are regulations. What the policy says is you should be able to do remote online notarization with an e-note in a Fannie Freddie closing, right? Or, with appraisal, you should be able to do a property inspection with, an hourly person scanning the property, take that data, give it to an appraiser, have them do a desktop and send that in. That's not a regulation. That's Fannie and Freddie saying, let's change the policy here to unlock lower costs or unlock faster closings. And then, of course, you have core policy stuff, which is how much should a down payment be? Should a down payment be 3.5% or 5%, 20%? What happens when this happens or that happens to LTVs or DTIs? Also policy. So it does affect if somebody, I was just thinking a lot about this company this week who is doing shared equity down payments from parents, TUFA, TUFA. So, the parents, instead of just stroking the check into the kid's bank account and then having it seasoned and all that stuff, just, hey, the parents will write the check. They'll get 10%, 20% equity in the house. The company will hold it for them, escrow it, protect it, and do an 80 LTV loan underneath. That's a policy. That's a huge product change, but it has a ton of policy behind it. So stuff like that. But you were going to mention something else about fintechs or technology in general.
Well, no,
coming into the industry.
My point is your value to those types of organizations is invaluable, because I see a lot of these tech companies with some serious capital behind them that are flying blind, that aren't plugged into policy, they're not plugged into regulatory guidance, and they feel as though that all they need to do is get some sales traction with some companies and get some adoption, get some users, get some head of operations to sort of incorporate their solution, that's really the hurdles that they need to jump. And it's really not. It's almost just the inverse.
Are you seeing the ability to test or pilot things changing at all with the advent of a lot of these agentic AI things? Because one of the biggest problems we had coming into this new wave of tech was it was just really hard to find a way to pilot something. You almost had to do it at the region level or the office level, because you've got 100,000 loans flowing through the system every year or whatever it is. To try to just use 1,000 of them or 5,000 of them for a test is how do you even do that? And so have you seen those tests, at all?
Well, no, I do. Well, when
Has
you
that
say
changed?
100,000 loans, I don't know what lenders you're talking about, because there's only a couple of those that do
I-
100,000. But but
okay.
but I would say, I mean, most of my in my ecosystem, like at NFM, we'll do 25,000 loans, 26,000 loans, and we're like the 10th largest retail lender in the country, right? I think cross country will do. We'll probably do 60 or 70,000
Sure.
loans, maybe 50 or five
Yeah. So
between
like,
50.
are you seeing tests? How does NFM do a test? How
Yeah,
does cross country
but
do a
the thing
test
is,
if they
you
want to
have to
see
do
if
it.
something works before they buy it?
It depends on the solution. If it's a CRM solution, like it makes sense to me, or some kind of
Yep.
POS, or
Yep.
some kind of loan
Yeah.
officer centric platform. I could see starting at the branch level or the division level. But if it's
Yep.
anything operational, title, underwriting, processing, closing, flow, anything that's going to reduce your cost per closed loan, that's not lead gen, almost would have to start at the corporate level. And I'm seeing.
So
What's that?
it's just really tricky. That's just a really tricky way for a new company that you and I have been talking about for years. We haven't really cracked the code on getting tech companies that are getting started to get those like early adopter partners. Those design partners early on are really important, I think. Like if I was talking to a founder who was trying to get in, that's what I would say. Like try to find a design partner who's not going to be so demanding that they break you and then at the same time you can just really get learning quick. I think of our friend Michael Vandy of Addy AI. UWM is like an early design partner. It's like an 11-person company, but he gets to do things like that's an example that can really benefit an early founder.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, and it's always a tricky. You go too small, you don't really get the material feedback that you need. If you go too
Yep.
large, to some degree, they tend to sort of just like the idea and duplicate it themselves. That's the one thing about AI is that I think there is a lot of shopping to see what's out there, to see what people can just build themselves because the tools are out there potentially to do it themselves. But what people don't understand with AI, especially, it's not a function of whether or not you can code or quickly produce code. There is
Agreed.
a framework that's critical, that sort of goes along with the solution that you're building. That you can't just throw it in Claude and try to create some kind of piece. I think there's an overall sort of thought process and a methodology to it that's much bigger picture than just that one particular feature set.
Totally agree. You have to have an AI strategy at that leadership level. And then one thing I would recommend, this came up yesterday in the event, which was like, how are you thinking about documentation and how are you thinking about record keeping? And I think a lot of people are not asking the AI to also document steps and record that as they go. It's almost like we'll document it when we figure it out. But actually what you should do is document it along the way and be asking the AI to document it along the way so that when you're done, you actually know how it got there. And I'm seeing less of that. People just moving fast, testing things. So that's one thing I would recommend is like figure out a way to get your whatever AI you're testing, document it along the way and just ask it to. It should be able to do that.
Yeah. Where are you seeing the most movement with AI in the conversations you're having? Is it on the operations or on the sales, or is it just really a combination of both? Like, where's the momentum going?
Yeah, the fastest adopters were all in the sales customer relationship side, right? So those voice AI, chatbot was first for sure. That was then voice commoditized really fast. I think now what we're seeing more and more of is the AI finding ways to re-engineer priorities or re-engineer workflows, tasks, who does what, and trying to assign AI different tasks that were previously assigned maybe to a setup person or something like that to see if you can start to now that you've put it out front, now start to see if you can drag it through. So a lot of people still have a linear thought process to AI. They're seeing, it work up front and they still think of their origination process as a straight line. And so they're kind of pulling the AI back through for some different setup and support things along the way. So I think we will start to see more operations this year getting into AI where it's like task-based and there are actual outsourced AI solutions where it becomes almost like a business process outsourcing platform. We talked about it last year. I think it's happening now.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I know I was talking to Kevin Perino, and his focus really was on the sales side in order to drive the demand
Yeah.
and almost to create the operating problem. Because ultimately, when you have more units to deal with, then you have more of the question of like, well, where's this efficiency going to come from? It's either going to come from outside where we hire new bodies, or we're going to create the efficiency inside through either partnering with a third party like AI vendor to be able to help churn more units per head that you currently have, or to build the solution in house. And that was sort of one approach, which I think is kind of to your point, especially in an age of like where production was flat, going after the product, ways to sort of spark demand or to identify demand, or even more so to identify the eligible demand for consumers. On the eligibility standpoint, I think it was sort of it was the most attractive low hanging fruit to go after.
Yeah,
What else?
I think the biggest thing, Rick, I think the biggest thing that I hear from lenders that's frustrating is a lot of AI agents that are being built, those AI companies you referred to, are sort of building an agent to do one thing and trying to get good at that and then do another one. And that is a very tech iterative mindset. The problem is a lot of lenders can't just adopt an agent to do property tax verification or adopt an agent to do one kind of minute thing. And at the same time, nobody has the like AI layer that talks to legacy software in a way that you can kind of adopt a more horizontal agent. And that is becoming a real challenge to think through. How do you start incorporating it in a way that doesn't kind of, it's not right to say death by a thousand cuts, because these agents are useful and these agents are faster and more efficient. So it would almost be like, do you actually get faster by having 30 single point solution agents in there doing things? I don't know that you actually get faster when you have like, oh, I have an agent do that, I have an agent do that, I have an agent do that. And all of a sudden you're managing 30 agents for something that used to just be two people doing it. So that's one of the things that I think is challenging. How do we get good at it?
So what else are you seeing? What kind of trends or how are you seeing the market shift? Like we both do a fair amount of consulting with investment banks and with the groups that provide data to investment banks. And the question is, like I'm getting a lot of, inquiries around AI, trends of AI, the impact of AI. Ironically enough, I'm getting a lot of inquiries around title, and mortgage, around, various title vendors on the back end to try to determine like how AI is impacting sort of the title landscape. And then just the overall mortgage market landscape, like how is the landscape shifting between wholesale, retail, between consumer direct and retail? And so how are you seeing the market in light of how the investors are looking at it and where they're looking at putting their money?
Yeah, it's mostly questions around the big public entities. The PennyMac, UWM, Rocket, Freedom, Cross Countries. I throw kind of Better and Loan Depot into the mix there a little bit, of what they keep an eye on or what they're asking about or sniffing around. And their biggest questions are, where are referrals going to go that drives origination market share shifts? Is there anything happening there? So we'll get to that in a second. And then two, what is going on with the servicing books and servicing platforms? And what is that gonna do for retention and driving market share around refi retention? So those are kind of the two biggest questions that they ask. What is happening? So all of these originators shifted to become mortgage brokers, for instance, and UWM over several years became the number one lender, as an example. Is that going to hold? What are the trends going to be around referrals of business in a new emerging tech world where does wholesale maintain its growth versus like across countries growth, and where did it come from? So I get questions like that. Those are kind of two big like investor style questions. And my answers tend to be around who's the loser and why in those scenarios. So how did cross country grow? Well, they probably grew in part by recruiting away loan officers who wanted to stay in the channel, wanted to stay in distributed retail, and just all consolidated around a recruitment story. Um, is How long does that last? How long can you do that?
Yeah.
Can you keep doing that? And so they ask questions like that. They think about stuff like that. What I'm seeing that's most interesting is a real battle up funnel for partnerships with big buckets of consumers. I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but like big groups of consumers. So we're seeing a real race to find the brand partnerships where there's 2 million, 5 million, 10 million users on an app or in a portfolio or in a platform doing something tangential to mortgage, but not directly mortgage. And then a mortgage company coming along and being like, partner exclusively with me to do that.
Yeah.
I know, one that came to mind was Robinhood and Sage, obviously. But all that is an example, a symptom of a much larger race where everybody's trying to get their mortgage offer higher and higher in the kind of thought process of a consumer before they even go shopping. So where an investor might, an investor or the kind of Wall Street folks you're talking about might see like a trigger bill come down and call us and say, what do you think's going to happen with this trigger bill? What I'm seeing is a bunch of really big players trying to get up funnel ahead of it so that it's not even an issue. It's a non-issue. If you're plugged in to somebody's app or profile on some financial site or some other part of their life, their employer or whatever. And so it's almost like everything old is new again. Like the race to give employers a mortgage benefit was a big deal,
Yeah.
whatever, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And now it's almost come back around, but it's all digital. It's all digital. It's like I can just put this widget right there for you, and you can basically give a home ownership benefit to all your users or all your whatever, alumni, all your. So that race
Well,
up funnel
don't
is
you think
like
that's where AI probably will have its most impact? Is just correlating the
100%.
data,
Yes.
right? So it's not about like finding a consumer who goes to a website to get their credit pulled for the purposes of getting a mortgage. It's the consumer who's going out and buying a crib, and that correlates with them possibly, more than likely having a baby, and that correlates with the fact that they probably will need a larger home as a result of getting a baby sometime in the next 12 or 16 months. And as a result, like there's this correlation of data within the sphere
Yeah.
of home ownership that isn't directly related to qualifying for a mortgage, but it's directly related to the evolving life of the consumer, which tends to, bring that consumer to the place of getting qualified for a mortgage.
Yeah, I would say that's a practical example because it used to be that data has been available. You had to buy it. It was pretty expensive. So only larger companies or platforms were buying it, but you had to buy it. You had to ingest it. You had to understand which of the fields meant what to your data science team. You had to then apply that in your lead engine. And then you had to fire it on certain cadences based on the data. That was actually a pretty rigorous process for a lot of companies to do with their data science team. What now you're seeing is you can plug that data source into AI, and AI will make the recommendation for the next best phone call, next best email, next best propensity based on the information it has. And the more information it has, the better it can do. So you can target that person who just bought the crib with outreach that AI recommended instantly. And then based on how they respond, AI will make a recommendation. Call this person back. Don't call this person back. Email this person. Don't email this person. Text this person. That type of analysis, first of all, was a whole data science team fired through a lead engine, lead management, and then a sales team managing all the expectations and keying in what they were going to do next or reminders. All of that is gone or could be
Yeah.
gone with what we're seeing with especially like CRMs applying the next best action type mindset. So like
Well,
I think that's an example. Like Relku is one that comes to mind, but I know they're all doing it. So but I think next best action recommendations, those types of propensity, now's the time to do this. I think all of that, I'm trying to think of another example, but Mova AI comes to mind as like, we heard something in the phone call that that person who bought the crib, we called them right away. We talked to them. The AI heard something that the person didn't, that the salesperson didn't catch, and serves it back up for an immediate follow-up call on a topic. And then you call back and you convert that. So like those missed opportunities type things, those like kind of implicit things, AI's monitoring is the eye in the sky, the eye on the call the entire time. So I think there's going to be a trend to get more of those retail loan officers onto company equipment
Yeah.
because it's honestly not even a trust issue. It's literally just we want to make sure we don't miss any opportunity. And it might even be you're talking to somebody about a refinance or you're talking to somebody about some other transaction and they mention their kid's going to buy a home. Well, salespeople will capitalize on that and try to make another lead out of it. But you can feed that through AI and then reach out to them or the kid automatically or something like that. It's all kinds of just speed to expert type of stuff. And I think the next best action and the speed around like capitalizing with the expert is really where we're headed.
Well, it seemed to me that lead gen, obviously lead gen 1.0 was just the standard sort of,
Yeah.
this. Well, and when I say lead gen 1.0, I'm talking about the non-tech lead gen, because lead gen 2.0
Yeah.
was the lending trees,
Lending tree. Yep.
consumers going direct to a website to get their credit pulled,
Yep.
and where the intent is explicit, right? It seems like
Yep.
lead gen 3.0 is much more aggregated. It's much more intuitive. It's much more, well, the consumer. It's much more like tangential, where you have a
Yeah.
consumer who goes to Pinterest and looks to on new kitchen designs or porch designs or bathroom designs, and more than likely their intent behind that is to get money to redo their bathroom or redo their
Or
kitchen
something like
or
that.
redo their
Yes.
roof or
Right.
something. So it
I agree.
becomes much more sort of intuitive, and now the technology is in place to actually deliver those leads
That's
from
right.
a top of funnel standpoint. So it is going to, but that serves, that shifts it, because 1.0 was very realtor dependent, was very loan officer dependent in capturing that relationship. 3.0 arguably supplants that relationship, because all of a sudden you're identifying these motives before the relationship takes place. And then you're delivering that occasion to a loan officer or to an automated outbound voice bot to explore further to the consumer as to what their motivations are, a pre-qualification, and then a routing to a specific loan officer to engage,
Yeah.
pre-qualify, pull permit, and start an application.
Yeah. You're making me think of two things. So let's just break down relationship for a second. One, I think if you are dealing with consumers who think of mortgage as deliver me the money, you're a money source, you're a money store, just give me the money, then you're going to see more and more of that as long as you get me an offer early, as long as you get, up funnel the way you just described, they're going to be willing to do it. I think they still want to know if their rate is competitive. They want convenience, so they don't want to really shop, but they want to just make sure I'm not making a mistake. That's where AI, agentic AI is going to come in. They're going to go to ChatGPT and say, "Hey, this
Yeah.
offer just came in. Should I shop it?" And ChatGPT is going to tell them something based on their activity. And that moment is going to be whether or not they go shopping. And if they go shopping in any kind of way, they may end up in the more lead 2.0 bucket somehow. They will have shifted from 3.0 to 2.0 if ChatGPT recommends go shopping. If ChatGPT goes, yeah, sounds like a great deal, that's it. It's over. It is over. But so that's
Yeah.
a big trend that I'm thinking about. But then you say relationships. So what's the way to interfere with that? What it makes me think of is more of like the Dave Savage world, the trust engine world of, well, it isn't about money. Anybody can get you money. It's about the relationship between your life and the data and trust with me because I'm an advisor and I'm going to guide you through this over time. So that's the way the highest producing loan officers will stay the highest producing loan officers is they've interfered with or disaggregated this like up funnel digital offer. And that offer can be made through the apps you're talking about in the way you're talking about. But that person goes, oh, I already have an advisor for that. And that's the question. I mean, that literally feels to me like the future of how consumers behave is, which direction are they going to go, and what value do they put on the advisor?
Well, and ultimately the question is going to be around how that market share is going to shift between lenders, right?
Yeah.
Because the model you're describing caters to a very small set of lenders in the country. And the question is whether or not AI will assist those who aren't as sophisticated. And I think we may have talked about this in a previous episode where the question was like, is it a great equalizer, or is it something that really, or is it a great separator?
Yeah. I think what's going to happen is a lot of what has been built around teams and bringing up kind of junior or younger loan officers to like be a part of a team or a branch or a region, as well as the support, the professionals that kind of support the loan officer or support the high producing celebrity LO. I think that's what's going to fundamentally change. So a lot of these lenders, especially the big distributed retail lenders, are going to be also generating their own leads and generating their own technology solutions to make their highest producing loan officers more productive and feed them more, keep them satisfied. So what you're going to end up seeing is it's going to be that like mid-tier, bottom-tier producer and process person or sales support person who gets replaced in favor of keeping the highest producing folks. Well done. If you were building Shant Bonosian's career today, you wouldn't need to build out a whole mortgage company within a mortgage company of people who run his playbook. You would just build the tech process and put him at the top, and you would, instead of 70 people on the team, you'd have 3 and AI. So I think there's still going to be the really excellent high producing loan officer at the top of that. It's just what's underneath them and supporting them. I think it's going to look totally different.
And to your point, I think it's not only going to look different, but I think it's only going to enable people like Shant to even get substantially larger, potentially. But what's curious is that I am seeing a lot of activity on the flip side at banks. I actually thought banks would be much slower to adopt or to engage with potential AI, solutions. And I'm actually seeing a lot more activity in that front.
Well, I think the relationship already existing helps them. When we talk about getting higher up funnel, theoretically, a bank should be like, well, my consumer checking account folks are the highest up funnel folks I can find, and doing some propensity on them should be able to allow me to make a mortgage offer. I don't know how many banks have like started to communicate between consumer banking and mortgage to like build some of that out. I think banks are doing a really good job, a pretty good job, putting AI in their servicing book, putting their AI in their existing platform to make better offers to their existing homeowners around things like HELOC or customized offers. For a long time at Rocket, we were very good at targeting an offer to a person, either with a phone call or an email, but it was generic. We believe you can save money today. It's a great message, but it's a generic message. What's happening now is the AI is able to say at Huntington Bank or Fifth Third or whatever, whoever's using Ardley, but Fifth Third, whatever. But no, you put it on, you hook it into your product and pricing engine, you put it on your servicing book, and now it says, Rick, you can save $337 today at your address. And now you have a customized offer based on that day's pricing. Do you want it? Or that to me is a much more compelling offer. And banks, if you're not, need to be making that offer on a daily basis based on the parameters that they've set out. Now, they don't have to annoy the shit out of their customers with a daily email. You put parameters around that say, we're only going to reach out to them when they can save X dollars or X on rate. The other thing I haven't seen yet, but is really exciting to me, is letting the consumer pick their own parameters. We'd like to enroll you in our mortgage program, our monitoring program, our rate program, whatever you want to call it. Let them tell you when they want to be contacted for savings. And then you're saying, hey, remember when you told me to tell you, you could save the money you said today. Now they haven't even shopped yet because they know I already put it in there. They're going to let me know and I can save money. They don't go shopping, and you customize the offer, they convert. So I think those two things for banks, just running product and pricing on your portfolio and or these like customized programs, could be very effective to make them resilient against some of the online digital refi shops.
Do you see any slowdown in the adoption, or a more of a cautionary approach with AI?
Well, I mentioned documentation earlier. We definitely are like, people are thinking through the governance piece. How am I going to explain what this thing did if I had to? And then I think nobody wants to be the target of, if there were to be that first kind of unfortunate situation where AI went sideways for some reason. So I think the adoption has been somewhat cautious on some of the core like PII stuff and some of the core things, simply for like, I don't want to be the first one to mess this up, and no technology is perfect. But I think it's just more change management, honestly, and budgets and bureaucracy than it is a true risk of hallucinations or some bad headline for now.
So with the expansion of creating bots to do X, Y, or Z within the organization, what does that do to the tech stack? Does that make it more complicated? Does it simplify it? Does it make it more difficult to manage? Does it streamline it? It doesn't feel like it's streamlining it at all.
Doesn't feel like it yet, but I think that's because of these one-off tests that are happening. I think my biggest feedback that I've been hearing is that the mindset that you mentioned earlier, that you have an AI strategy that you're applying to all of this, that when that happens, you really get disruption of core systems. I think people were really comfortable thinking, I buy this system, it does this. And that's how we ended up with acronyms like LOS, POS, CRM. You remember when those like closing platforms, when like Simple Nexus or SnapDocs, wanting to be a closing operating system. Somebody, Total Expert for a minute, wanted to be a marketing operating system. The reason that was effective is because it was really easy to think about it that way. It was like, we have our POS, we have our LS, we have our marketing system, we have our closing system, we have our servicing system. That mindset is gone, I would say. Like, it's an old mindset. It is broken.
Yeah.
AI has crushed it. Now everybody's like, I can't think of it that way anymore. How do I think about what I need to do? And how do I think about getting that done wherever I can get it done? And so, to some degree, that's probably the biggest shift, is like, there's no such thing as a standalone system needed. You may still have one, you may still want one, but is it needed? And what changes after that? I don't think we know yet. There's going to be a lot of unintended consequences. Mike Yu from Vesta will tell you that what it's going to do, it's going to force technology companies and lender partners to work together to define outcome-based solutions, outcome-based, maybe even outcome-based pricing, but definitely outcome-based monitoring of KPIs and metrics and stuff, because you can no longer look at like a pipeline moving in a specific gated or milestone way. It's not, it's going to be more what was the output of that task, day, or agent. It's going to be more like that.
No, that's fantastic. Mike actually came up in a conversation a couple of days ago regarding. In fact, I was talking to Kenzie May, the founder of Kenzie May, Ryan, and he was. We were just talking about the status of the loan origination space and how that's shifting, because there's a lot of legacy platforms that either, if you're on Encompass or Byte, Mortgage Cadence or Mortgage Flex, or these platforms, it's like, you either wait for that current provider to build organic native AI features, or you partner with a third party that will provide those feature sets on top of or with the existing LOS you have, or you just switch altogether to a solution that like Vesta.
Those are your choices. Yeah.
And what's interesting, there hasn't been, in fact, I don't know of too many. I mean, there was that one company, Loyola, that I interviewed and trying to understand really what their value proposition is the most in the space. Did we talk about Loyola? Did you and I?
I think I know that. Actually, I think I owe him an email or a phone call. So if he's
Yeah,
watching this,
yeah.
I'm really
You
sorry because
should call.
I think we got connected, but we never set a date and time. So I will follow
What
up
I'm
if
curious, what I'm curious about companies like that, not so much about Loyola in as much as it is about what they're trying to do. Because what they're trying to do is create this workflow, this AI workflow engine that operates whatever LOS you're on. You can be on Compass, Point, Byte,
yeah,
whatever. And it becomes this sort of overlay to your existing LOS to prevent or to avoid having to necessarily switch LOS platforms to enjoy or to compete with AI features. And I don't know of any other solutions that are out there kind of doing that. If they're either trying to create a whole new LOS platform or a whole new AI powered CRM,
yeah.
and they're not, there isn't like a feature overlay that accomplishes that. But I actually pointed them in your direction because I didn't know that conversation earlier around policy versus regulation, how that would impact, how
Yeah.
it is that they're doing what they're doing, but you should reach out to them because I'm curious. We've tested them. I've tested them. And I know some other enterprise lenders are looking at them and kicking the tires. Their big claim to fame is something that I marginally believe, and there's a part of me that doesn't, where they say 75% efficiency in processing and underwriting tasks can be sort of saved, or they can increase their output by 75 or 80% as a result of leveraging their workflow from a white
Yeah.
paper
It's
that
like,
they.
what does that
And
mean?
yeah,
Right.
well, it sounds almost too good to be true. Because what that means to me is if I'm doing 35 units a month as a processor, I'm able to do 60 or 70. If I'm
Sure.
doing 40 or 55 units a month as an underwriter, I'm able to do 80 or 90. And if that is what they mean, then that's a pretty attractive value proposition.
And by the
Yeah.
way, our systems like LOS and others, we're already starting down the path of trying to run as many of the tasks and do as much of the work behind the scenes based on how complete the data file was, right? So I think of income, assets, and employment. So the more data you get in, it's not just waiting for somebody to push a button. It is running a constant engine to say, okay, we're 30% done, we're 40% done, we're 70% done, we're 90% done, as it's gathering the data it needs. And our systems were already trying to do that. Micro applications and the way that we were doing different calculator engines, income engines, asset engines separate from the LOS and feeding it back in and stuff like that. So architects, like technologists, were already doing that within most lenders. So now it is the agent can go out and get the data, pull it in, run it through the engine, respond in real time when it gets back to the LOS or when it gets back to the next engine. So there is a relationship between the legacy thought process, the legacy architecture, and agentic AI. And that's where I think you could get 75 or 80% efficiency because you already kind of had it working in the right way. It was just working in the right way, task-based or role-based, really, I should say. And now it's not role-based anymore. It's completion-based, how much of the file is complete.
Well, I like the idea of just starting with the end in mind, because to
Yeah,
some degree, a lot of the minutia is becoming less important because it's being done for you, whether it's document collection, document analysis, document filing, filling out the application, all of those tasks. Dave Savage said this, and I think it's a salesy way of saying it, but I think it's probably the most true in that all these steps and functions that we do as humans weren't really designed. They're not really human functions to begin with. So AI is taking these things where we're filling out a loan application. They're kind of taking over these things that weren't really, they're not really human features to begin with. And they're
right.
focusing humans on what we are good at, which is on the relationship side, the
Yeah.
analysis side, the purpose, understanding the purpose behind the consumer in seeking the capital for an investment property or
I,
or
I
a
say it all
mortgage.
the time. I say it all the time, Rick, but I think it's a good bookend to this conversation in this episode, which is we have so much we haven't solved for. We have so many hard, complex housing finance products and issues. We were talking earlier about the intersection of policy, process, and product. We are still so bad at so many things. I think of condos. I think of manufactured housing. I think about what I said earlier about why we're not using down payments better, why we're not using parents' funds better, why we're not doing shared equity on the parents' house for a down payment, why we're not doing HELOCs that actually deliver at the point of renovation need. Why we're not doing renovation estimates better. Like, there are so many hard problems mortgage can get involved in and help with, that if you can get your people out of what you just said, a Fannie Freddie document of some sort, of like doing work on a Fannie Freddie loan, then you can get them working on stuff that's actually really interesting and actually really hard. We have no shortage of products we need to roll out, and we haven't rolled many out. DSCR was great, but it only counts as one in the last 3 years. Like, what are we doing? And so
Yeah, and we're already predicting the demise of it, right?
exactly.
So
Let's do better. Let's do better.
Yeah, anyway. So I'm going to be in DC at the regulatory, the summit on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Me too.
The MBA. So you're still going to be in DC?
Yeah, I'm coming back. I'm leaving tomorrow. Yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm coming back again on Tuesday.
Kiss the kids, come and then turn around and come back. Yeah, so just keep me posted when you return to DC, and I'll let you know when I land. I land Monday night, but
Thanks.
I'm looking forward to seeing you. I think this was a good episode, and I appreciate your leadership, my friend.
Hey, great to talk to you as always, and I can't wait to see you in person.
Good deal, man.
Take
You
care.
too. This is a wrap for Real Fridays.
Take care.